Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is Tuesday, our map day of our Zettelkasten week, where we get to build out our boxes and have a whole lot of fun doing it. So, what have you got for us, Victoria?
Okay, so in the last 2 weeks, week one, we talked about world building and how to construct a hard world. And in week two, we talked about how to construct a soft world. So for our Zettelkasten week, what I want you to do is I want you to just create a section for each of those things. So you may recall from our hard world sequence that a hard world contains some of the following elements. One of the first ones is it is governed by a recognizable form of government, and there is a society and a culture that you very specifically build out. What is the class system like? What kind of cultural norms do they observe? All of those little details fall under government, society, and culture. So I would encourage you to just take a card for each one of those things, put it behind hard world building, assign them an address so you can find them, put that under H for hard world building in your index, and then start filling in those little details. I would begin with the one that's the most exciting. Let's say, for example, you are really excited about culture building, and maybe you're interested in some customs that could be interesting for your characters. You're interested in some of the norms and things that they observe on a day-to-day basis, maybe ways that they interact culturally. If that kind of anthropological stuff is interesting, start there and just build out some of those little details so that you have that larger piece to hang the little bits on when you start drafting and writing. Maybe you decide to add something about the land and the geography. Remember, those are also specific components of hard world building. So if you know that geographically it looks like this, and that includes these particular features, give yourself a geography card. And behind that, start adding in those little bits and things that interest you. Maybe it is a water-based culture, or maybe they do something particularly fantastic with aerial aspects. You get to decide, it's your story, but just start brainstorming those little bits and stick them in behind geography or maybe behind climate. There are many terrific stories that function because of the environment that they're set in. If that's interesting to you, start there. Just start giving yourself a dedicated space to fill out each of those areas. Now you may be thinking, what if I don't have a particular story for these things? What if I just think maps are cool and I want to build out a cool geography? Go for it. It doesn't have to apply to a particular story. You can build out hard world elements just in your imagination and get them on the note cards to then be pulled later, maybe years later, when you're writing a story and you think, ooh, that thing that I did with those maps could be really cool in this world. That's one of the ways that you start to meld those pieces together. Alternatively, let's go to the soft world for a second. You may recall that a key characteristic of a soft world is that it's character driven. Okay, let's riff off that. Maybe you begin with a strong male character and you have some aspects that you think are part of who he is. Aspects, if we're talking about character traits, might include something like patriotism or honor. Think of those kinds of elements and how can you relay those in an atmospheric way, or in the way that this character is behaving, the way that they treat people. Again, those are just note cards that you're riffing on. How can I show that this character is honorable? How can I show that he observes patriotism? Draft it out and tuck it away behind that world building card for a soft world. Again, later on when you're writing this character, you may remember perusing through your index when you come across an honorable male character. Holy cow, I did all of that writing about honorable characters, and I did research on generals from the military that I thought were cool, and I did research on men from small towns who had done big things in their lives. You're going to go farm all that stuff, and it's all going to be tucked away safe under that honorable soft world character. So, whatever that looks like for you, give each of those two things a chance, and just start dropping in some details that might help you build them out. The last note that I'll give you on a soft world is don't forget that an atmospheric element is a hallmark of a soft world. So what does that look like? Maybe you're just going to do an experience capture and you're going to look out the window on a cold, rainy day and you're going to capture what that looks and feels like. Stick it under your atmospheric cards for soft world building, and then when you're drafting and you're thinking, I really need to recall how to build a dreary, sad day to anchor this character, you're going to go back to those atmospheric cards and pull that stuff, and you can write from it. We'll talk more about that when we get to the writing week next week, so I'm not going to expand. That's just a peek, but that's just a little bit on how you can take what we've filed and start to funnel it into what you're later writing. So with that, I will throw it over to Kathleen for her map.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Victoria. I always love seeing how you pull everything together so that we can grow our Zettelkastens and be ready beforehand so that when the opportunity to write arises, we're prepared with all of this work that we've done in advance. And all the while we were doing the work, we didn't even realize that we were building something that we would use in the future. We're just busy having fun. Well, that's kind of the same avenue that I'm going for with affability. You know, we've been playing with affability for 2 weeks now. We looked at the definition. What does it mean? What does it mean technically? What does it tell us about the character and his relationship to the world, and especially to other people? Because now affability is an empathy trait. Now the question comes in, how are you going to save affability in your Zettelkasten? Well, I just gave you a clue. It is an empathy trait, and it's the first one. So you might want to have some kind of a divider card for your empathy traits, because there's 13 empathy traits, and this is just the first one. We got a year of empathy traits ahead of us. Just think of that. So now, then you want to have your empathy section. What are you going to put into your empathy section? Think about it, because you've got definitional things. Will you remember next week all that you remember right now about what affability really means? Jot it down on a card and save it there. And then by all means, your affability characters. As you go through these coming weeks, we've been talking about it for 2 weeks now, what to notice. How would you know that somebody had affability in the pinnacle? Did you see somebody now that has it, or do you remember somebody who has it in the pinnacle? Make a card and put pinnacle on it, affability pinnacle, and describe that character so that later on, when you want to have a character that has affability in the pinnacle position, you can remember, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What is a character with affability totally out of his mind, not in his thoughts at all? How does that look? You can also want to capture, how does that differ from affability in the wing? We know that they're kind of both lost states, pinnacle and wing, but what is the difference between the two? Well, one of the things that's different between the two is what's going on in the character's head. Remember, we said when it's in the pinnacle, the character isn't even thinking about how he's coming off to the world, whether he's coming off pleasant or foul or whatever. The person with affability in the wing, however, might be very well aware and might be a tad villainous. Aha, I can be so nice and I will get an advantage. Ha ha ha. So there is a big, now he's got his mind in it, but he's not making the right choice, but he's well aware of it. Another possibility of that kind of a character you can capture and put in your Zettelkasten for affability might be the person who tries to be affable but isn't getting very far at it at all. Just basically in a grumpy kind of a mood all the time, and all right, I'm going to try to be nice. Can't quite make it. There's another character with affability in the wing, very different. So start realizing these characters can come off quite a bit different in appearance, and yet both are affability in the wing. They take it down to the rudder where it's a decision to be made. Once again, you could have somebody who's saying, okay, I do want to get ahead in this company. I don't really like making a happy face at people, but he is my boss. So I'm going to put a smile on my face before I go into that meeting. He's choosing. That's very clearly in the rudder position. Let's take another one in the rudder position, another card. Go into your affability box in your Zettelkasten. This is a character who's making the choice. Well, things have been really rough lately, but I don't want my mood to rub off on other people. I am just going to go out of my way to be pleasant to everyone I meet, even though things have been really, really tough lately. See, that's another decision. It's another case where affability is in the rudder position. Very different, collect all the different cases about affability in the anchor. We probably know someone who's just basically calm and pleasant and peaceful just about all the time. These are people who walk through life acting like librarians, helpful, sweet, kind, pleasant, soft-spoken. How many of those can you capture? Where can you sprinkle them in? When things get a little wild and crazy in your story, you can go to your Zettelkasten and say, oh, I need an anchor affability person to tone things down. There's my one. Yes, I did notice her in the library. Oh, she was so good with the kids. Whoa, that was something else. Into the Zettelkasten in your affability section. And of course, the base, they're going to be your saints. You're going to spot some of them, maybe in the books you read, maybe in your hero collection. Maybe they'll just be ideals. Maybe they'll just be imaginary figures, because people with affability in the base are truly amazing people. Don't we all wish we could be there? So this is an example of what we're going to do for affability. We're going to capture all of these different kinds of people in our Zettelkasten, just like Victoria was talking about with atmosphere. You can go and grab which one you want. How would you sum this up, Victoria?
Oh man, as always, we just fit perfectly together. I think for me, the most important takeaway is when you get to the Zettelkasten week, always remember it's exactly as Kathleen described. What we're building are tools that you can come back to later when you need to grab a writing component. Too often, I think people conceive of writing as I'm just going to sit down, I know what I need to say, I know what the scene needs to have in it, and I'm just going to write it from my imagination. Many times that works, but often our imaginations fail us, or we find they're not taking us in the right direction. That, my friends, is when you come back to these cards that we create, and you can pull from them, lay them out on the desk, move them around into some kind of a scene or situation that makes sense, and use those as the basis to either get the writing going or fill in the details that maybe elude you in the writing moment. However you use them, your Zettelkasten will always be there as your communication partner. So if you haven't already started it, I would encourage you, start your cards now. And secondly, where can people find us if they want to learn more about this Zettelkasten and writing stuff, Kathleen?
Well, you can come to LiLLiPub. Over on LiLLiPub.org, we meet every Saturday for fusion writing. You can share your writing and we can talk about how it's coming and give you some coaching. And we also have several different circles, the circle for Zettelkasten, the circle for character traits. And Victoria, you have some news for us, don't you?
Well, as a matter of fact, I can report the book is finished. The Zettelkasten for Fiction Writer's Book is officially done, and it has officially been handed off to the typesetter. So my friends, I can report you should be able to have this book in your hands by the end of this year if everything goes according to plan. So just a little bit longer. Thank you all for hanging in with me. It's been a long year, but it's done and it's almost ready to get to you. So we will keep you posted as we come along, but it's almost there.
Isn't that spectacular? We've been waiting and watching for it to be written. And of course, we all have the notion that, okay, as soon as Victoria puts down the pen and says it's finished, that means we get it tomorrow, right? No, it needs to be typeset and it needs a cover and it needs a web page so you can buy it and. So we have to wait a little longer. That's what it means. But we've waited this long. I guess we can wait just a little longer.
That's right.
Very excited for you, Victoria. And while we are as yet not as well known, while Victoria is not quite yet a famous book author, as she soon will be, come on over to LiLLiPub.org where you can actually talk to her in fusion writing and she'll actually read your work now while we're small. This is your opportunity. And then you'll be the one to be able to say, you know, I was in fusion writing with Victoria Crowder when she spoke to me as an individual. Can you believe that? Yep. That day's going to come. You're going to be very proud. Come on over to LiLLiPub. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.